All that shortly. We start off this edition with the latest from U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's India visit. Just a short while back, Mike Pompeo met India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar in the Indian capital. The two leaders are expected to discuss a whole range of issues that includes Iranian oil and trade. According to sources, Jaishankar will also be raising the issue of the security of Indian diaspora in the Gulf. India is expected to ask the U.S. to de-escalate the situation in the area. New Delhi will also reinforce its stance on the S-400 deal with Russia. Earlier this morning, Pompeo met Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his New Delhi residence. The high-level meeting is aimed at building the ground for Prime Minister Modi's meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump later this week in Osaka. India and the U.S. will be releasing press statements in just a short while from now at 2 p.m. IST. Now, this is a crucial visit, given that it also follows Mike Pompeo's short but significant stopovers in West Asia. Pompeo's visit to India comes ahead of the G20 summit in Osaka. Diplomatic sources telling us that the issue of U.S.-Iran tensions will feature prominently. Remember, the U.S. has also refused to extend the Iran trade waiver to India. Iran was India's second largest oil supplier last year. Diplomatic sources telling WION that S. Jaishankar will be speaking about alternatives for India's oil imports. WION has also learned that Indian officials have already spoken with their Iranian counterparts over the current situation. New Delhi has asked both Tehran and Washington to refrain from escalating the situation any further. According to sources, S. Jaishankar will also be raising the issue of the S-400 missile system. That's also expected to come up during those talks. India has a long-standing defense relationship with Russia, and it is expected to re-emphasize on that stance. New Delhi went ahead with the deal, keeping in mind the country's security needs. India struck that deal with Russia on the purchase of the S-400 system despite U.S. sanctions on Russia, which means that by signing the S-400 deal, India risked triggering CAATSA, or the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. The U.S. has repeatedly stated that India should look for an alternative. India, however, has made it clear that it has no plans to scrap the S-400 deal. And let's delve deeper into what the expected outcome of that three-day India visit is. Joining us on the broadcast live from New Delhi is our Associate Editor, Ramesh Ramachandran. Also joining us right here in the studios with me is Ambassador G. Parthasarathy. Coming to you first, Ramesh, for a quick update on what is expected to transpire over the next few hours. We're about an hour away from that joint press statement that is scheduled for 2 p.m. What are you picking up? What's the buzz?
Indeed, after the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister's residence in the morning, the scene is now shifted to the Indian Foreign Ministry behind me, where S. Jaishankar and Mike Pompeo are meeting as we speak. Now, this is the first high-level visit from any foreign country to New Delhi in Prime Minister Modi's second term in office, and both leaders can be expected to discuss the entire gamut of bilateral, regional and global issues of interest and concern to both Washington and New Delhi. But in particular, three broad areas of issues would be front and center: trade, technology and terrorism. Why do I say that? Because trade is an outstanding issue which has been bedeviling the relationship for quite some time now. Remember, on the 23rd of May, the U.S. removed the GSP, or the Preferential Trade Agreement, with India and imposed tariffs on Indian products. And India retaliated recently by reimposing tariffs on American goods, especially agricultural produce. Now, in addition to this is the issue of the H-1B visa issue. Now, India sees this as a trade issue, as a labor mobility issue, but the U.S. treats it as a purely from a perspective or prism of immigration. And there are reports that they want to cap the H-1B visa, but Pompeo has since said that there are no such plans as of now, but one can't discount the fact that H-1B visa issue can snowball into a big issue going forward if it is not resolved anytime soon. Second issue is technology. Now, India and the U.S. are negotiating an agreement whereby India can procure high-end defense technology from the U.S. and the draft of the agreement is being exchanged and being sort of poured over by officials on both sides. And the third issue is terrorism. Now, when we talk about terrorism, one can't but help talk about India's neighbors, especially Pakistan. And incidentally, Molly, today is 4 months of the day when Pakistan fired an American missile, AMRAAM missile, to target an Indian Air Force jet after the Balakot strikes by India. So that should tell you something about the current state of India-US defense ties as well.
Absolutely. This is the first high-level visit from any country's leader since Prime Minister Modi's re-election, and a lot of expectations, of course, considering that it is expected to lay the ground for that upcoming meeting between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump later this week in Osaka in Japan. Coming back to you, Ramesh, in just a bit, Ambassador Parthasarathy, as we just discussed, a lot of issues on the table. All issues, in fact, are on the table. There is no structured agenda. Which of those, according to you, will emerge as the sticky points? Of course, the Iranian oil issue and trade among those concerns.
Well, if you ask me frankly with regard to trade, the Americans have a point. But let me start off by saying that we are not the only country in the world facing this problem with Trump. His own neighbors, Canada and Mexico, his European allies like France, Germany, and China, of course, and countries around the world face this problem with Trump. He wants to unilaterally change the world trading system to the advantage of America. It is the most powerful economy, and I think Suresh Prabhu had remarked today that these are issues to be worked out in the World Trade Organization. So we have a fundamental difference with them on this, but everybody else lives with it, so we will have to learn to live with it and perhaps negotiate. They also have some points on imports. Restrictions we've put in on items like, stents for medical treatment and so on. And that, I think, we at this time, in an era of liberalization, going back and bringing in new import restrictions when you want a global free trade area is really something we have to correct ourselves. So I think there's scope for negotiation on trade. On the Russian weapons thing, I think when Putin was here, we worked out to put in the agreements to ensure payments are smoothly we can make. At least that's what emerged in that visit. And this is the S-400 is a problem they have with us and Turkey. Now, frankly, if you ask me, they don't like the S-400 because they want to peddle us their very, very expensive F-35 fighters, which Turkey is buying, but we are not. So that is a complication which lies there. And then Trump has a particular bee in his bonnet, which is that we have high duties on Harley-Davidson motorbikes. For your viewers in India and the world, Harley-Davidson motorbikes are what Trump's one can say his candidate, his supporters go around in. They are really the upper white class in the smaller towns, and they go around in these Harley-Davidson motorbikes. So he has to be seen to be acting for them. China have agreed to produce it in China. I think we can strike some sort of a similar deal but I doubt if anyone in India will buy that expensive motorbike.
Right.
So it is a complicated thing, but we can resolve it. But I think you must look at one thing, the symbolism. In Osaka, we are meeting India, Japan, and America. There's trilateral in one direction. But we are also having summits with Russia and China.
Right.
So in effect, I think we're telling the world that, look, we want good relations with everybody. Lastly, Iran. I think there the payments are going to be a great problem because we can't get our banks subject to dollar sanctions and they have to be made through our banks and there is no other payments agreement. I think that's something I also believe that we should work together with the Russians and the European Union and the Chinese who are opposed to this policy of Trump.
Right.
Because this is unilateral. So there is diplomatic space. It will be discussed with everyone Prime Minister's meeting.
Yeah.
in Osaka, and we'll take it from there. Even the Japanese may not go against the Americans, but they don't like those sanctions. They also buy a lot of oil from Iran.
Right, so taking a cue from what you just said, and this meeting between Mike Pompeo and S. Jaishankar is largely aimed at laying the groundwork for the upcoming meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump, which also comes at a very interesting time in the backdrop of the US-China trade friction. To what extent is that an opportunity for South Asia and specifically India to try and fill that gap?
You know something? First we have to get our house in order. Our textiles, leave alone China, they can't compete with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Vietnam. So as the Prime Minister is now apparently attaching greater focus, let's get our exports organized. You can't reach a situation where in textile, which you have dominated for 50 years, you're running this, allowing Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Vietnam to run circles around you. So we have to get our house in order when it comes to this. But yes, I think open markets is what we'll be looking for. We're also, I think, going to take note that of the WTO. So that's going to remain the focus.
All right. So a quick update also from Ramesh on, we have already discussed what the next few hours in the day will be looking like for Mike Pompeo. Ramesh, this is a 3-day visit. So there's, of course, a lot that's on agenda. A lot of expectations are riding high as far as Mike Pompeo's meetings are concerned. Bring our viewers up to speed with what his schedule will be looking like before he leaves from New Delhi in the next couple of days.
Well, today is the operative day of Pompeo's 3-day visit to India. In the morning, he called on Prime Minister Modi. He also held talks with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. And as we speak, he is closeted with India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar. Towards the afternoon, he will have a meeting with the Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry and also U.S. Embassy officials. And he will cap his day's engagements with a public address at the India International Center at about 7 p.m. local time before flying out tomorrow morning for Japan. So this is the official agenda of Pompeo's visit. But that said, Molly, a quick comment on how Pompeo made his way to New Delhi last night. Now, he had a brief stopover in Kabul en route from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, where he held talks with President Ashraf Ghani and the Chief Executive Abdullah. And interestingly, he told reporters accompanying him that he hopes for a positive resolution or a positive solution to the Afghan peace talks by the 1st of September. Now, that date is interesting because elections are due later that month. And between now and September, both Pompeo and the special envoy Zalmay Khalilzad hope to make progress in their talks with Taliban. Remember, the 7th round of talks will begin on the 29th of this month in Doha. So India will be looking to hear from Pompeo on Afghanistan as well.
All right. So that's what the next few hours will be looking like for Mike Pompeo as a part of his crucial India visit, which, of course, is aimed at looking at a number of issues before U.S. President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meet later this week in Japan, in Osaka. That's, of course, as a part of the G20 summit. Now, Mike Pompeo has hit the ground running in India. Even before he started his visit, Pompeo seemed excited about strengthening the relationship between India and the U.S. Here's what he said during the U.S.-India Business Council meeting.
I hope together we will finally fulfill the great promise of cooperation that was present at India's birth and which remains evident today. These are big ideas. It's what you all came here for. And they're big opportunities, too. And I'm very much looking forward to my trip next week and meeting with Prime Minister Modi and my new counterpart, face to face. As Prime Minister Modi said in his latest campaign, he said, Modi high to Mumkin high. Modi makes it possible.